better watch what you say. You better watch what you do to me. Don't get carried away. Girl, if you can do better than me, then go. But remember, good love is hard to find. Good love is hard to find. You got lucky, babe. You got lucky, babe, when I found you. You put a hand on my cheek, and then you turn your eyes away. If you don't feel complete, if I don't graft you all of the way, then go. Then go. But remember, good love is hard to find. Good love is hard to find. You got lucky, babe. You got lucky, babe, when I found you. Go, just go. But remember, good love is hard to find. Good love is hard to find. You got lucky, babe. You got lucky, babe, when I grafted you. It's good to start the stream with being demonetized via a copyrighted song. That was Tom Petty and the Graft Makers. How you guys doing? Good evening. Hey Tina, how to garden? Karen, Brett, Steve, the Texas boys, James something or other, Sadie Sower, Scott Head, Carol, Marcus Aurelius, welcome. New member, Marcus Aurelius. Good to have you here. You've been around for a long time. Thank you for supporting the channel. Hello, Quincy. I'm glad your son-in-law is all right. Karen, that's scary. All right. Well, cheap, stretchy electrical tape works well too. Yes. So we're going to talk about grafting tonight. And grafting is one of those, it's one of those weird gardening things. It's one of those things where you look at it and you go, nah, nope. I can start ivy from cuttings. I might start a tree from seed, maybe. Grafting, first of all, why would I want to do that? And second of all, it's too hard. That's definitely too weird and hard. I mean, it's hard to get people to actually prune things. You know, teaching people to prune. I get a lot of comments, people on my pruning videos, you know, going, hey, I can't do that. I just about passed out when you cut that tree. I can't stand the sight of sap. Like grafting now, grafting's getting really weird. It's like doing an organ transplant or something. Ay, grafting, man. That's scary stuff. Grafting is terrifying. But it's not really. And I'll tell you, I did not get into grafting until just this last decade, maybe 6 years ago. 6 or 7 years ago, I actually did my first grafting, which is funny because, you know, I was already writing gardening articles. I had done a lot of gardening. I'd gardened in multiple climates. I'd grown a lot of different things, but grafting was one of those things that was just beyond the, yeah, it's too much. Too much. It's too hard. It looks weird. It's like sticking sticks together and then they're supposed to heal or something. That's nuts. Also want to welcome new member Zachary Fisher. Thank you, Zachary. Zachary's been around for a while too. I appreciate the support. If you are a member, you get to use the crazy emojis, and occasionally I will post something just for members. I will put up, the pre-release versions of books, and sometimes we'll have a special stream where it's members only or just member chats. We haven't done that in a while because I haven't been doing as many live streams. I've been producing more videos and doing a lot of farming and gardening and not doing as many live streams, but we'll have to do a members only one soon too, because I think we have at least 100 members now. So welcome, Zachary. Thank you. Also, Foo Bear. Foo Bear has remonetized the stream with a $10 super chat, which means for the bit of time that was taken off there, I know I'll get a copyright notice and they'll say this portion of the video is, revenues go to so-and-so or whatever. So thank you for that. I appreciate the tips. So we're going to talk about first the why, and then we'll talk about the tools, because I see there's already going back and forth in what we can use to graft. And you know me, I'm a cheapskate. I'm a gardening cheapskate, so I don't do anything the difficult way. I like to do things on the cheap, with readily available materials as much as possible. If it wasn't for the neighbor having a tractor that I could use anytime I wanted, I would still be doing everything with hand tools. But having a tractor to borrow is too much of a temptation, even, for me. That becomes the easiest way to do things and the cheapest, and therefore I adopt it because I'm easy and cheap. But let's talk about why you would want to graft. There's multiple reasons. Just the other day, I got a comment from a woman who said, "Where do you get your trees? Where did you buy all those trees that you're planting?" I'm low income and trees are expensive and I need to get trees started. So my answer to her was, well, I buy trees from a variety of different places. I'm so far behind, having moved back to the United States near the fall of last year, August of last year, and having already grown lots of trees and planted lots of trees and losing the nursery of trees that I had down on the island, and losing my previous nursery of trees that I had in Florida before I moved to the island. I was starting over again. And there's the old time or money thing. Do you have time? Use your time to make some money. Do you have money? Buy some time. So in this case, I bought time, but beyond that, it was a very easy decision for me because my landlord had said, look, if you buy trees to plant on the land, I would love to have more fruit trees over there. So please go ahead and plant them, and you can take the price of the trees out of the rent. So I immediately racked up a huge bill and took it out of the rent. He's like, okay, that's enough for this month. Hey, Mama Woods, Fishes and Loaves Life, new member. Thank you very much. Welcome. You've also been around for a long time. I appreciate the support. So, yeah, glad to have you. Now you could use the machetes and the chainsaws and St. Placenti's cross and the turnip and the nuclear bomb and the Baphemus and the green thumb. So, I bought these trees. And I know I talk about plant propagation all the time, but it's a time or money thing. Bare root planting season is here. Buy a whole bunch of stuff and plant it. But as for this woman that wrote the question, it is easy to grow your own fruit trees. There are nurserymen who grow and graft, and they do these trees, but there's no magic to it. Once you've been behind the scenes in the nursery business, like I wrote a little book, How to Start Your Own Home-Based Plant Nursery. I don't know if you guys have that. I'll put a link. I don't think I have it in this thing. It's a simple little book. It's based from, my experience starting a little Florida nursery. And, I learned how to do a lot of stuff from a friend that was in the nursery business, and I observed other nurseries, and I learned a lot about how to start and grow trees and how they do it. And I met a guy who was doing bench grafting, and I did plant propagation. I made a little ramshackle mist house so I could propagate a lot of stuff. So here is the link, everybody. And if any of you, if any of you mods ever want to let links through, if you see somebody posting a link or something, feel free. Or if you want to drop any links in, that's cool. So the nursery business takes some of the work and does it on a larger scale so they can make money selling it to people that don't do these things. But if you are limited on your money, if you have the knowledge, you could just go ahead and do the same stuff that the nursery business people are doing. And one of those practices is grafting. I've talked a lot about growing fruit trees from seed. Growing fruit trees from seed is a good gardener best practice. I want all you good gardeners to grow trees from seed. It's a lot of fun. I've done peaches and plums and apples and pears and all kinds of things from seed. Pawpaws. So, I have chestnuts from seed in my old food forest. And these trees from seed, now there's the variability. There's a couple of factors why the commercial people don't like trees from seed. One of them is the variability in the genetics. You don't know that you're going to get the same variety as what you planted, which I find exciting and fun, but commercial growers don't want that. They don't want to wait, 6 years for an apple to grow and then find out that it's a little more sour or smaller or not as pretty as the commercial varieties they could have planted. Now, the second thing that you get by bypassing the seedling phase and going directly to grafting is you get a mature piece from a fruiting tree and you graft it onto a seedling tree, which bypasses the juvenile period. A lot of trees have a juvenile period. That is a period of time where they think, I'm not big enough to bear fruit yet. I'm too small. I have to grow up a bit and then I will bear fruit. So sometimes this can be only a few years, like peaches, 2 or 3. It's like nothing. So grow them from seed, no problem. You don't have to wait that long. But apples, it can be 6 years or 8 years. Oranges can be 8 years. Avocados can be 6 years, or they can be 10 years. Some of these things have these long juvenile periods. Mulberries are terrible. They have a terrible juvenile period. It's like 10 years from seed for a mulberry. And then you don't know if you've got a male or a female, which means you may not get fruit. If you have a male tree, you just get pollen, and then, you get allergies. So if you graft, you're taking a piece off of a mature tree and you're putting it onto a seedling. The seedling is an immature tree, but the scion wood, which is the donor wood from the adult tree that goes on top of there, already thinks it's an adult, which is why when you get grafted citrus in a pot, you'll see this little potted citrus that's 2 feet tall for sale at Home Depot in a 1-gallon pot, and it's got a couple of little limes on it or lemons already. How could it do that? It's only like 1.5 feet tall. Well, the reason it can do that is because it thinks it's already a grown-up tree. It's been grafted. It's a grafted tree. So it thinks it's mature. Now, if you had started a lemon or a lime from seed and grown it, that tree would probably be 8 feet tall and, 5 years old before it actually put any fruit on. But because it's grafted, shucks, that thing might be, 1 year since the graft and it's got fruit on it. So you're bypassing the juvenile period and you're also getting exactly the variety. Grafting is a form of cloning. I don't know if you guys know this. Some of you do. Many of you probably do, but not everybody does. Like the navel orange is a clone. It's not like they plant seeds to get a navel orange. What they do is there was an original navel orange. It was a sport, a bud sport, which is when there's a mutation in the bud. And one branch grew and it had navel oranges on it. And somebody said, man, that is a good orange, and it's kind of cool that it has a little belly button at the bottom. So they saved that. They saved a little of that wood and they started grafting it onto rootstocks. This is just a clone of the same tree over and over and over and over and over again. There are millions and millions of navel oranges. The rootstock is probably not cloned. For the most part, it's probably trifoliate orange, started from seed most likely for a strong root system. Trifoliate orange is a rough citrus family tree. It's a very tough rootstock. And it's used as a rootstock for a lot of other things. Sometimes you get sour orange as a rootstock as well. But they graft the navel orange on top of it. So if you have a navel orange next to a navel orange, they are exactly the same tree genetically. Because its grafting has gone on and 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 on. And so if you take scion wood from a mature tree, say, hey, I like this pear tree next door that my neighbor has. You can take some pieces of the wood off of that tree and you have one of those dumb flowering pear trees in your yard, the Bradford pears, that everybody's like, oh, I'm going to plant one of those things so I can get 1 week of incredible white blooms and then nothing for the rest of the year. You can cut that tree back and graft fruiting pears into it. So your neighbor has a really nice pear. You can cut back and graft into it. And guess what happens? In a very short period of time, you will get fruit. Particularly because that tree, if it's already a larger tree and you graft onto it, there is this huge amount of root underneath the ground. It's strong. It's got a strong developed root system. You put these little pieces of scion wood up there. The sap rises in the spring and that tree wants to grow and it starts shooting all the energy into those things and you'll get nice big growth that first year. And in just a couple of years, you'll start getting pears off of those grafts. Whereas if you planted a baby pear tree, even a grafted one, it's probably going to take you 4 to 6 years before you get any pears off of it because it'll feel like it has to grow enough root system to support the fruiting wood over the top. So even though you bypass the full juvenile period, you don't bypass the period of time where the tree is getting its roots under it. So you can cut back an existing tree and do it. And one of the dumbest things that I see people doing regularly, they write me all the time, I had this sour orange tree in my yard. I hated it. So I cut it down and I bought a navel orange from Home Depot and I planted it back there. It's like, well, that's great. But that navel orange is not going to bear much until it gets bigger. Yes, you may have a couple of fruits in the pot, but it's like slow. So, it's like, it's slow. Whereas if you grafted onto an established rootstock, those roots might be 20 feet this direction, 20 feet this direction, or 40 feet in that direction. You graft on top of it, that top will grow so fast that it's like, boom, you've got your navel. So you just find somebody else with a navel orange, and you graft a little piece onto that, you chop it back and you graft onto it. Boom, man. You've got serious return in a very short period of time. So I want to thank you. Karen sends a $50 super chat. Thank you, Karen. And says, thanks for playing 30,000 Years last night. Split the tip with your awesome guitar shredding son. Oh gosh, he's going to love that. Don't spoil him too much though. I don't like to pay him more than like $5 per hour because it gets expensive. No, he's going to totally dig that. Great. Now everybody's going to be like, give the super chats to your son. Like, but I feed him and I house him. No, he's going to love that. Thank you very much. That'll go towards guitar strings because he blows out a lot of strings with his shredding. Believe it or not, he was playing last night on 13s. He put a set of 13s strings on there, which is very, very heavy gauge, just to see what it would sound like because he wanted to see if he could get extra tone out of his Les Paul. And it is, it sounds great, but man, those things will tear your fingers up. It's a good thing he's got strong fingers. It makes you better, So, back to the rootstocks and grafting. That's one reason you'd want to graft. You would use an existing rootstock, take a non-fruiting pear, take a crab apple. Do you have a crab apple growing in your yard? People are like, I don't like those crab apples. Well, use it for a rootstock. Find an apple that you like. Take a little piece out of it. Look at Stephen Edholm, Skill Cult. Skill Cult, I mean, he provides apple scion wood now and again. And, you know, this time of year is grafting season, which is why we're talking about this right now. Because right now, before the trees wake up, is when you want to graft. You want to graft when they're just starting to wake up, when the sap is starting to rise, and they're going to heal up and they're really going to grow. So one reason you want to do it is to bypass the juvenile period. Another reason is to get a variety that's consistent. Say you want a Granny Smith, you can start an apple from seed, and then the next year when it's a little twiggy apple tree, you can graft a Granny Smith on top of it, and guess what? Now it is a Granny Smith apple. As for the question, where would you graft on the tree? If it's a little tree, I usually graft it. I mean, I graft it like 6 to 10 inches or so from the ground, right down there near the bottom. If it is a larger tree and you want to do a Franken tree type of a thing like Steven did, you can graft on any branch you want. You can cut back branches a little further to the trunk and graft onto them. You can graft onto the tips and get a few apples over here and a few apples over here, you know, of different varieties. You can do a lot. I mean, you just replace and you can play around with it. But grafting allows you to bypass that juvenile period, to convert an old rootstock or something you don't like into something that is fantastic. You know, this is good stuff. It is giving you the ability to get fruit much faster than if you were doing it from seed, and to take terrible non-productive trees. And you know, turn them into something useful. There's a group in California that was guerrilla grafting edible fruits onto the trees that were on the street. So they have these street trees, these flowering pears, and they were going in and grafting scion wood. So from like fruiting pears. So here and there along some of the streets, here's a little set part of the tree that's got some flowering pears on it. Here's a little part of the tree that's got some fruiting pears. So it's flowering and it all flowers, but then hey, this part of the tree starts producing fruit. So there's fruit hanging over here and there that you can go pick, which is really awesome. You know, it's cool. I've actually grafted peach wood onto wild plums growing along the side of the road in North Florida, and had peach branches, you know, growing over the street, which is kind of cool. But you can do some really weird stuff like that, where you can take something that's not productive and turn it into something productive. What I was doing in today's video was I actually grafted a piece of a crab apple onto a Granny Smith. Granny Smith is a self-pollinator, meaning it will make apples even if it does not have a mate, but it doesn't do as well as if it has a mate. So you'll give it some company, but that doesn't mean you have to plant a second tree. You could just take one branch and convert it to a different variety. Now you have two distinct genetic individuals sharing the same root system. So this section of the tree is a Robinson crabapple or a Dolgo crabapple or whatever. This part of the tree is a Granny Smith. I like the crabapples because they bloom for a long season and they bloom a lot, which means they're good for pollinators for apples. Often apple orchards and backyard orchardists will plant a single crabapple somewhere to pollinate all the trees. Plus, if you get crabapples off it, the crabapples add a little extra flavor. If you're making cider, or you know, you're making jelly or sauce or whatever, it's I think crab apples are awesome. I like them, and you get the pectin out of them for other things. So, you know, the ability to switch to propagate your own trees and save a ton of money, you know, these are like the reasons you should be grafting. It's the time and money thing, plus it's the mad science thing, just because it's cool to do, you know. So let's say I'm this woman that wrote, and I don't have that much money, and I'm looking and going, okay, well, I want to plant an orchard in my backyard. So what would be the first step? The first step is to go and get some fruits from the variety that you want to grow. So, I mean, not the variety, but the species you want to grow. So let's say you want to grow pears. Go buy a pear from the store. spend $1 or whatever, take the seeds out of it, chill the seeds in the fridge. Sometimes pear seeds will germinate right away when you plant them because the pears have already been sitting in refrigeration. They need a little bit of a chill period to start, but sometimes they won't. So I usually just stick them in a little bit of slightly moist potting soil, put them in the fridge. And they'll start to root. Usually a few weeks later, you'll see little roots coming out of them. Take those and plant them in pots. Then they'll start to grow up. Now you're bound to lose some of them. I always lose some of them to damping off. This last set, I planted a bunch of sand pear seeds. They all grew well, and then something came onto my back porch and bit the top off of every single one, which I found very annoying because I was like, that's it. I was going to start some rootstocks. Oh, well. But you start your rootstock. Then you grow it out for a year. Now, comes to the next spring. They're asleep still. You've got your little sticks. They're like this big. They're sitting out there, and you go, okay, now I need to graft them. So what you do is you find somebody that has a pear tree that you like. There's almost always somebody that knows of a pear tree. Just keep asking people, do you know anybody that's growing a pear? Do you know anybody that's growing a pear? What are they growing? Oh, they're growing an anjo. Okay, cool. Or there's some old hard pear that my grandma used to make pies out of. Okay, that sounds good. Go and cut some of the wood that is the same diameter around as the little whip that you have, that little tree, and you will graft them together right before the trees start to wake up in the spring. Tie that graft up real tight. Make sure the cambium layer is matching up and all that stuff. We'll talk about how to do that in a minute. But right in the ground if you want to, no problem. Chances are it's going to live. So now you have made that variety, and in just a few years, you are going to have pears. And it's not going to take you much longer than if you spent the $25 or $29 or $40 or whatever you spend in your area to buy fruit trees. So that's what I recommend you do. You want to start apples? Go start some apple seeds. You want to start peaches? Go ahead and start some peach pits. You can start seedlings from citrus and graft any citrus onto them. Though I don't recommend grafting some huge citrus like grapefruit onto a little key lime or a kumquat or something that grows small. You don't want like a small citrus to try to support a very vigorous, large citrus like a grapefruit. What you'll end up with is the graft will come up like this, and then where it's grafted, it'll get thick, and eventually the whole tree will fall over unless you prop it up. It's got like crazy stuff. So I would start with a heavier rootstock. Like orange is probably fine for just about anything you wanted to graft. Go buy an orange. Or, ask people at your church to save seeds for you or something. Ask your daughter, okay, next time, when you buy the kids fruits, would you have them all save the seeds for grandma? Grandma's going to do some mad science. And then you go ahead and you plant all those seeds, and then you graft onto them when they get a little bigger. Now you can literally produce $1,000 worth of fruit trees in a year with a couple hours work. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? It's not that hard. It's the time or money. And they're going to produce quickly because you've grafted them. Pretty much you're going to get, you may be a year behind having to buy them. But hey, it's the time and money thing. And some things like your stone fruit, like the peaches and nectarines in particular, they're very, very fast. You don't even have to graft them, but if if your neighbor has a peach that you really like, you can graft a piece off of it onto a little peach seedling, and shucks, man, that thing could produce the next year if you keep it well fed and watered. And really the speed of getting a tree to produce is reliant on how well you take care of it. That's a limiting factor. A lot of people stick a tree out there, they water it occasionally, they don't really feed it, they don't prune it properly, they let the grass grow all up to the trunk and choke it, and you get this non-productive tree, and you say, oh, I don't like that thing, man. It just never makes anything. I don't understand. It's like, well, you didn't really take care of it. And the first couple of years, if you really take care of them, they will grow so stinking fast. I'll tell you, we had a mulberry and I was keeping ducks, and I put a kiddie pool at the base of the mulberry tree. It was a newly planted mulberry. It was about 5 feet tall or something. By the time when we actually got the ducks, I think it was like one of those ones from Gurney's that's like 18 inches tall, and I put it in the ground, and it was about to 4 or 5 feet when we got the ducks. And I put this kiddie pool at the base of it, and I put water in it from the hose, and the ducks would go and they would play in this thing, and they would eat food, and they would spill it all over the place, and they would leave their droppings. They would turn that water into scum water like every day. It was full of manure and food, and the ducks would splash around in it, and they would make this big mess. And so I kept having to top it off with water, and I would pour it out occasionally and top it off again. And that mulberry tree, where it was, I have never seen a tree grow that fast. It was fertigated. It was constantly getting duck manure water at the base and growing and growing and growing and growing. And that tree was overhead. In a year, it was making this big umbrella. And in 2 years, the thing was a monster, like that big around. It was insane. And it's just a matter of care. Like the ducks, it was an accident, really. I just wanted to put that little pond, in the shade for them to play, and I watched that mulberry just go completely insane. It's like when you plant bananas next to your septic tank. It's incredible. So, if you're willing to put in the care, if you don't have the money, take the time, start a bunch of stuff from seeds, and graft on it. This grafting is your moneymaker. And I used to graft loquats in my nursery regularly because getting improved varieties of loquats was quite difficult. And with loquats, I would use a graft called side veneer grafting, which I learned from Oliver Moore, who is a very knowledgeable plant guy in the Gainesville area. He has a little nursery that's open sometimes, and he's just an all-around kind of a thoughtful experimenter type of a guy with a heart for people. And I went to one of his grafting demonstrations some years ago, and he showed me the side veneer grafting, and it's like, wow, that it really takes well. And that was the first loquat graft I did. It was actually the first graft I ever did, and it took no problem. It stuck. So that's a real simple one. The one I use the most, the graft that I use the most, is called the whip and tongue. Let me see if I have a picture of a whip and tongue. 1 second. This is a cool. Let me show you here. I'm going to see if I can make this appear. 1 second. I have some illustrations that I did for Free Plants for Everyone. By the way, if you do not have my book, Free Plants for Everyone, The Good Guide to Plant Propagation, it is below this video. There is a link. Please go buy it if you're at all interested in growing trees and you want to support what I'm doing. I would much rather you guys be growing your own stuff and saving all the money, as well as buying my books, which supports me and my family, which is great. Okay, so this here, the splice graft is the one to the left there, and then the whip and tongue is the one to the right. The whip and tongue I use all the time, and it looks difficult, but all you really have to do is do that splice graft. You cut that angle, and then you put a little notch here and a notch there into the top, and you stick the two pieces of wood together, and they hold. They'll actually hold together like this. And all you got to do is turn around and wrap them and seal it off. And it'll take. It is really great. It is great when you're grafting and you're short on hands. You need to wrap it really tight. It just goes stick. Now the splice graft works just fine, but it is way harder to hold together and make it match, I find. It's tricky to do the whip and tongue when you first do it. You realize where you have to cut is a little difficult and stuff, but I just put a little notch in one side and a little notch in the other, and I fit them together, and they grab, and the wood kind of just binds itself together. Most of my grafting I like to do on smaller pieces, maybe 3/8 of an inch pieces on stone fruit, apples. Pears get maybe a little thicker, and the figs are usually thicker than that. The figs are usually, coming up on a half an inch often because they're just thicker in general. But I love the whip and tongue graft is my go-to graft. So if you want to practice doing this, you don't have to just go out in the field and do it. You could take some prunings off of your trees and take them into your table. Take a little piece of branch of whatever wood out there that you want to use. It doesn't matter that much because you're just going to practice on it. But go nip a piece off of a wild plum or something. Sit there at your table. Get a regular old boring utility knife. Cut that angle. Cut that angle on one, and then cut the angle on the other, and see how they fit together. See, hey, look, can I fit these together? And then cut your little tongues so they lock. And experiment with it at the table. Just sit there and nip them and stick them and nip them and stick them until you're like, I could do this outside. And then go outside and do it for real. And then you haven't cut the tree. You haven't made a mistake. There's no problems. No pressure. You sit at your table and you do a set, and then you go outside. Just sit there and practice. It's really easy. To use no pressure. You got to lose your fear of grafting. And just go do it. No problem. And the other one that I use, side veneer and the whip and tongue, I use those a lot. I have used wedge grafting. I like to do the graft where you've got a big piece like this. Sometimes you want to take a tree that's older and you want to wedge graft it. You can take a tree, it's like that big around even, and split it and take two little pieces of wood and stick them on either side of that split so they line up. So you've got these little wedges that are sticking into it. And I'll show you a picture of that. That's the one that I had on the... Here we go. This is cool. These are all cool. I just find grafting to be magical. Okay, that's huge. This here is your wedge graft with the two pieces. So you've got a bigger piece of wood. Say you've got an apple tree, the trunk's like this big, and it's got some branches coming out here and there, and you say, I like the shape of that, but I want to replace this section of it. So you go ahead and you do this little wedge thing. So you're cutting those two pieces of cyan wood like that, and you cut the wedge. You just take your sharp blade. You take one of your wife's kitchen knives when she's not around, and you just tap it in there, and you kind of work it down into the wood, and you split it down about that far, and you stick those little wedges in there. And the important part is to match that bark. Inside the bark, just underneath the bark, there's the cambium layer, and that's that little white. It's a little whitish green layer just underneath the bark. So the bark on the outside, doesn't matter how thick that is. There's a little layer of cells in between that's called the cambium. You've got the wood, and then around the wood you've got the cambium, and then you've got the bark on the outside of the cambium. The cambium is where all the action happens. The flow, the xylem and the phloem and the cambium, and they're all in that. There's that little layer, that vascular layer, and that's the area that heals. The cambium is responsible both for making the wood inside of the tree and for making the bark on the outside. So the cambium layer is this little thin layer that grows with the tree because it's making wood on the inside for support, and on the outside it's making bark for protection, and it gets bigger and bigger. The cambium layer is always that little layer right inside. But the cambium layer is the part that makes new wood when there is a damaged piece. So you got two pieces of wood like this, and you match them up so the cambium layer is touching. So long as that cambium layer is touching in there, it will start to heal and grab, and it will just pull all that thing together. The wood in the center is not going to heal, but the cambium will build new wood and bark around that graft point. So all you really need for tools is you could take, your utility blade, and I will take flagging tape is my favorite. I've used parafilm. Parafilm is a little more expensive and harder to find, but flagging tape is just what I use now. Flagging tape is that cheap tape that they use at construction sites. It's like a buck or $2 a roll, and it's really like you just wrap it around stuff, and it doesn't have any stickiness to it. I just wrap really tight, and then tie it, and then I paint the whole thing with this tar stuff. It's called tree coat. So that tree coat tar, I use to seal it off. It's like asphalt, liquid asphalt or something. It's gross. I love the way it smells. I love the smell of aromatic hydrocarbons. But what that does is it keeps it from drying out. So you're just going to stick those pieces together. Try to line up that little white layer inside the bark. That's very important. It's got to line up somewhere so it can heal. Even if it lines up just on one side, like in this cleft graft here. So that cleft graft, it's lining up on the outer portions. And then you see that the whole thing is covered with grafting wax there in the second image, including the 2 cut ends on top of the scion. It's very, very, very important to heal that stuff up like that. And note also that the scion wood is not leafing out. This is done during dormancy. This is done before the tree wakes up. After the tree wakes up, all bets are off. Things get much harder to graft for most of your temperate species. But you stick those pieces in there and you seal that whole thing off, because the thing that kills those grafts, if you've got the cambium lined up, if you don't have the cambium lined up, it dies because the sap does not flow through. It doesn't heal. There's nothing for it to touch and heal. It cannot knit itself back together because there's no ability for it to knit back together. It cannot heal. So it just dries up and dies. The second thing, other than the cambium, you may have the cambium lined up, but if the graft area and the scion wood dries out because you've just cut into it, cool, dry, spring day, it's sitting there. If it dries out, it dies. It cannot heal together. The cells can't join. Drying out is the biggest enemy of your grafts taking. So you line up your cambium, and then you cover and paint over that whole thing with some sort of a wound sealer. You can use wax. You can use white glue if it's the only thing you have. You can get tree coat like I do. I really like tree coat. I'm old school. But it's just, you got a $1 utility blade and then like $1.50 of flagging tape, and you're off to the races. And, if you can just get something to coat the whole thing with, it's really simple. You don't need a special grafting knife or anything like that. Now, there's a bunch of advanced methods for grafting. I'm not an advanced grafter. I just am a backyard gardener grafter. And even in my plant nursery, I really only needed to know 3 grafts. So I use the same ones over and over and over again. I have not done the bud grafting for citrus that a lot of people are using. It's the primary way to do citrus, because citrus is a problem because of the greening disease. And the greening disease has not been, it looks like there may be a cure coming, but it's a big problem. So if you graft and one tree has greening and the other one doesn't, you will spread it and kill it. So, that's a problem. Monique says it's like 1 bazillionth of an inch thick, the cambium, so you're gonna be bad at this. Let me see here. Scott says, should you always mulch young fruit trees? I'm going to take questions now because there's a lot more we can talk about, but this is a good time to take questions. We're 45 minutes in. I'm going to stop talking and start answering you guys. Scott says, should you always mulch young fruit trees? I read some folks say you shouldn't mulch some types like citrus. Yeah, I've mulched citrus and it's liked it, so I've ignored that. If you had a really wet climate, I wouldn't mulch citrus. It's better to have it a little drier than too wet. But they seem to appreciate the mulch when I mulch them, so I went ahead and did it anyways. Sometimes there are areas where you have issues with mice nesting up around trees and that kind of thing, where you might not want to mulch. Another benefit to not mulching citrus is that if you are in a climate where it only freezes occasionally overnight, if you rake all the mulch away, the ground beneath will transfer much more heat. If you have a mulch layer on top of the ground, it stops the ground from warming the citrus above it. The thermal mass of the ground is inhibited by that mulch layer. So, you may want to rake away your mulch on a freezing night. Matthew says, is there a tree that will tolerate wet feet that can be grafted onto? Yes. There are mayhaws. If you're familiar with mayhaws often grow in wet spots. And some of those mayhaws you can graft pears on top of, which is kind of cool. Some things are better at being rootstocks than others. Like, for example, the Chickasaw plum that grows wild all over Florida is like a universal rootstock for stone fruit. Most stone fruit will graft on top of it. So nectarines, apricots, peaches, cultivated plums, they'll all stick to it. And apparently you can graft loquat onto pyracantha, but I haven't started it yet. I haven't tried it yet. I really, really, really want to do, Food Bear says, a lot of people, John Kemp thinks that we no longer know what full plant expression of their genetics is even possible due to conventional farming methods. Yes. It's a good... I saw one of his videos recently where he was talking about fertilizing to get rid of plant pests and diseases rather than spraying pesticides to get rid of a pest. You would actually feed better. So plants are getting all the micronutrients. They fend off the diseases and pests all on their own. It will actually kill the insects because the plant will be able to make complete proteins that kill them. So, Joe says, my aunt Alicia planted a hospit, and fortunately for her, she's getting fruit. The avocados may be small, but great tasting. That's fantastic. I think it's a great idea to, if you have the time to start things from seed. I definitely do it. Relevant Herd has a good point here. Planting 1,000 apple seeds, you could get a good, hearty, tasty apple that thrives, then graft the others with the variety you made. Absolutely. And the whole thing about apples from seed not being worth doing is ridiculous. If they have good parents, often you'll get a decent apple. It doesn't have to be the most awesome apple, but it's great. And incidentally, I talk about this in my book too. If you don't have my book, Free Plants for Everyone, The Good Guide to Plant Propagation, go to the link below and buy it. You will appreciate it. It's fun. And it literally, it's like a $16 book, and it's worth thousands of dollars in free plants. So yeah, but, if you're interested at all in saving lots of money and growing your plants, Free Plants for Everyone, that I wrote it for you. It's a cheapskate gardener's book for cheapskate gardeners. Like me. But if you're too cheap to pay for the book, well, fine. Ten Bear says, your video on grafting apple trees for pollination was a great educational video. Thanks for that, dude. Oh, you're welcome. And also below this video too, I have the free grafting demonstration, Get Grafting. It's also on YouTube. I put a link to it. So cleft graft is helpful too. Yes. What grafting methods would you recommend for grafting onto 3-inch plus branches? I would do a cleft graft. I would split that thing and graft. You can also do what's called a bark graft, but I have not done those successfully. I'm missing something in that, but you can look up demonstrations on bark grafting and do it. I have to try it again. I started with some of the easier grafts, and then I moved on to the more esoteric grafts later. But by the time I was really experimenting with the esoteric grafts, the season was warming up and a lot of things were coming out of dormancy, and it was getting a little late for grafting. So, and then, the next year I moved to the tropics where I couldn't use most of the temperate species grafting that I had done. I had much more difficulty grafting in the tropics than I did. I mean, it's grafting on the easy setting, grafting in the spring with temperate trees. Stone fruits, apples, and pears are so easy. Jeremy says, does grafting change the flavor and quality of the fruit? Yes. If you graft whatever variety you graft from, whatever that top piece of wood from, it will reproduce the fruit of that tree. So whatever you get it from, if you graft a piece of a Red Delicious onto a Granny Smith tree, everything from the graft up is going to be Red Delicious. It will just be Red Delicious. It's not going to be a cross between Granny Smith and Red Delicious. It's just going to be Red Delicious. So whatever you graft on top of, if you take whatever the adult tree is that you take a piece from, that's what you're going to get. So you will get, if you graft a Gala apple onto a Robinson crab apple, you will no longer get little crab apples. You will get Gala apples. You will get nice, big, sweet Gala apples on top of it. So it definitely does change the flavor and quality of the fruit because you're changing the genetics completely. I'm going to see here. Keep going. Jules says, how long does it take for citrus to fruit if I graft mature trees onto a baby tree? They could fruit in as little as a year, but generally they want to get a little more root system. The reason they often fruit when they're in the pots is because they have a restricted root system and it forces them to fruit faster. Once they get their roots in the ground, they feel like they want to spread and hold the ground more. It'll often take like 2 or 3 years, but it's not nearly as long as if you waited for a seedling. That can take 8 to 10 years. The Country Ninja says, I'm definitely going to wedge graft my mulberry. Yeah, it's fun. It is fun. Yes, these instructions are in my book, and I actually illustrated it myself. Free plants for everyone. The link is below this video. Betty says, I saw a video. The guy in a 12-inch stump, he had cut off the top. He grafted all around it, maybe 8 pieces, wrapped it in cotton, then aluminum foil, then left it forever, maybe. It was amazing. There's some really weird stuff you can do. There is some weird stuff you can do with it. And it's really fun. Like, I've done it. You could cut a tree down and graft into it. But you can also cut the tree down and let it, like, cut a tree down right now. You don't want that pear tree. Cut the tree down to like this tall. It'll grow shoots out of it. So it'll grow shoots. It'll grow like maybe 4 to 6 foot worth of shoots over the course of this year. So next spring, you can take those shoots and do whip and tongue grafts onto them. And they'll take very easily. So say you want that tree to branch, say you wanted it to branch at like 3 feet above the ground. Chop the trunk at 3 feet above the ground while it's dormant and just let it grow back. And then just select a few of those branches, graft onto them, cut the rest of the rootstock branches off. And don't let anything grow back from that rootstock unless you want that fruit in the mix too. But select 3 branches of it, 4 branches of it, whatever, graft on all of them and just let them go. Xylem and phloem, those were the names of Ursula's eels, weren't they? Close. Flotsam and jetsam. Jeremy says, how closely related do the plants need to be for grafting to work? Can I make a peach, cherry, orange tree? No, generally they need to be inside of the same species or at least the same genus. Occasionally they can get outside of the genus, but it's not common. Like grafting apples and pears together is almost impossible. They don't want to join together. Now I think you can graft them both onto quince. I'd have to double check that. Quince is a relative of both, but they're close. They're both in the Rosaceae family. They have similar growth. You'd think that they work, but they don't. I've also found that sweet cherry is hard to graft onto some other things. It doesn't take that easily. I tried grafting sweet cherry onto black cherry Prunus serratina, and they were incompatible. Sometimes they just don't share close enough genetics to be able to heal together properly, and the graft is rejected. Just like if you have a different blood type, you can't be a donor for a specific person. Some people can and some people can't. Some are like universal donors, some are only receivers. It's similar to that. So you may be able to graft that sweet cherry onto a sour cherry or onto a flowering cherry, but it may not graft onto a black cherry, or a laurel cherry or whatever. It's close, but no cigar. So the citrus are nice because they almost all intergraft. You shouldn't have any trouble grafting one citrus onto another. Peaches and nectarines are actually the same species, so they intergraft, but they also intergraft with plums. And most plums will grow into most peaches and vice versa. Loquat grafts onto loquat, but it also grows onto pyracantha. Pears will graft onto hawthorn, which is just weird. So there's some things that you can do like that. You can graft roses onto roses. You can graft most grapes onto most grapes, but I'm not sure if you can graft, muscadines necessarily onto, say, Concord, because they are different, a bit different. So the potential is there, say, if you have an apple, to say, I want this branch to be Granny Smith, this branch to be Gala, this branch to be Red Delicious. I don't know why you would want to grow Red Delicious, but just in case you did. This, and this. And you can just graft different branches all the way around and have a whole bunch of different fruits. And the great thing about that is that you can have a long season, because we don't realize this because we just go to the store and we buy apples. But a lot of those apples are kept chilled for long periods of time. If we were eating according to the seasons, there are early, middle, late season apples. You can get apples by midsummer, and then late summer, and then apples into the fall, and apples that hang on the tree right into the winter. And if you grafted a tree, you could have a season, you could have 6 months worth of apples right around a long time, rather than getting apples for a few weeks like one variety might produce. Same thing with pears. You get early pears, late pears, keeping pears, cooking pears, you can get these different varieties growing on the same tree, which is just so neat, Another crazy thing you could do with grafting, like I mentioned in yesterday's stream, you can graft a persimmon. So you've got a male persimmon. You need a male persimmon and a female persimmon, at least with Diospyros virginiana, the American persimmon. You need both in order to set persimmon fruits. But the male tree doesn't produce any fruit, it just produces pollen. The female tree doesn't produce pollen, it only produces fruit. You need both of them, but maybe you don't have space in your yard for both of them. So what do? You graft a couple of branches. So your male persimmon tree, you leave one branch male, you graft the other branches with female cyanwood. Now you have both individuals on the same tree. They're sharing one rootstock, but it's become a self-pollinating tree. This one branch makes pollen, the rest of the tree receives the pollen, and it makes fruit. You have a male tree, you graft on female branches. If you have a female tree, you graft on one male branch. Boom, you've got it. If you have space for one apple tree, but you want a variety of different apples, you can graft different varieties all on top of it. That's pretty neat. But the further they are, different parts, different genetically, the less likely it is that the grafts are going to take. Like if, somebody said, is there anything edible I can graft onto oak? Probably not. You might try chestnut because it's somewhat related, but you don't know, it's worth trying. I tried grafting figs and mulberries onto each other because they're not that far apart. Didn't work. Now, you can graft breadfruit onto jackfruit seedlings. Well, that's cool. But I think that jackfruit does not graft onto breadfruit. It's really kind of crazy. So Alejandra sends a $4.99 super chat with a lemon giving a bird, or is that a lime? A lemon giving a lime a high five. Thank you for the high five, Alejandra. Much appreciated. Good to see you here. Steve says, thanks, we'll try that on the massive 10-year-old grapevines this year. That's great. Rufus says, what most people call mimosa is not a true mimosa. It's an albizia. Yes, it's albizia julibriscens. It's not psychedelic, but it is an antidepressant. I did not know that. It does have the pink puffball fruit flowers. I love those things for a chop and drop. They are a nitrogen-fixing tree, pioneer species, invasive. They're great to chop down and feed to other things. I grew one of those next to my black cherry tree, and I kept feeding it to it. Made the black cherry tree huge. Going down here. I'm trying to get through here. Zachary says, I'm just trying to make a cockatrice or a basilisk. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. Ask the Sphinx. Sarah says, I have Japanese maple to try mound layering on. It's got 5 to 6 sprouts out of a stump. Just read about that one last night. Super excited to try it. Yeah, mound layering is pretty cool. I cover mound layering in Free Plants for Everyone too, just in passing. I have an illustration of it. It's pretty crazy. Good way to get a lot of rootstocks. Prime Fighting Champion says, I love fruits. Grandma left us peach trees, orange, lemons, and others. I think I'm going to start messing around her yard, plant new things. She'd like that. Yeah, that's great. What a great legacy to leave. That's valuable. Benjamin says, David the Good, my first apricot emerged today. The flower had opened and died, and today I saw a little fuzzball emerging from the center. Isn't that fun? That's excellent. Lisa says, David, my friend has a beautiful willowy mulberry that's been neglected and needs some crossing branches cut out, but I heard they don't heal well. What do you think? I would just prune it. Some mulberries don't heal well, but some of them heal really, really well. It depends on if it's white, red, or black. I think it's the black ones don't heal very well, but a lot of them are actually white ones. But the confusing thing is that the white ones also make black fruit. They make white fruit, some of them, and some of them make black fruit. So it may be called a white mulberry, but it makes black fruit. I don't know what they were thinking when they named mulberries. But there are some mulberry trees down in South Florida. The guy would chainsaw them to the ground every year and they grow back. He chainsaw them like every 2 or 3 years. Chainsaw the whole tree to the ground, grow back and make fruit the next year. I would just go ahead and prune it. It'll probably be fine. And if it dies, well, start some cuttings first. Hey, the milkmaid, nice to see you. I'm going here. Blue-eyed Native American says, my almonds are flowering. Oh, that's fun. They really are beautiful trees, aren't they? I love the blooms on almonds. They're a lot like peaches. Steve says, Hawthorn, here's my giant death hedge now with pears. Absolutely. Hawthorn is great for a death hedge. I'm trying to go here. What can you graft onto a mulberry? You can graft other mulberries onto it. There's nothing else that I know of, except possibly che fruit, CHE fruit may graft onto a mulberry. It's pretty close. I tried grafting cultivated mulberries onto the paper mulberries, which are an invasive species in Florida, and none of my grafts took. I put grafts all over them just to see. No luck. I was very disappointed because I thought, man, wouldn't it be awesome if those stupid paper mulberries could be grafted? Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Scott says Southern Home Muscadine is a hybrid with quarter standard bunching grape, and its parentage might be fun to try and graft Concord into Southern Home and see what you get. Yeah, they might take because it is a hybrid. I used to grow those. They have a nice spicy flavor. My favorite muscadines are the great big bronze ones, but the Southern Home that's a nice tasting fruit. It's good, solid. Scott says I managed to get some apple seeds to start. They were either Granny Smiths or Honey Crisps. I just threw them in dirt and into the fridge. That's the way to do it. That is the way to do it. Redboth Farm says, David the Good, I think persimmons grow like weeds here. I haven't seen much fruit, though. Strange. It may have more males, or they may not feel like making fruit. I've seen more persimmons than fruit, too. I've seen a lot of persimmons growing and only maybe an eighth of them actually having fruit on them at any given year. So I think with some care, they would probably give fruit. Thin out around them, feed them, but you don't know if they're male or female either, which is kind of irritating. What you can do if you want to is graft Diospyros kaki, the Japanese persimmon. It grows great on top of the Diospyros virginiana. So if you can get scion wood from a nice, sweet fuyu or one of those big ones and graft it on there, it'll take. So if you see them, tap them in. They like that. Becky says, awesome idea, male and female. How do you know if your seeds will be male or female? You have no idea until they bloom, which can take some years later. Going back. I'm missing here. I'm trying to get everybody's questions here. All-in-one Ace says, watching from China. These guys are so secretive with their grafting. I'm happy to be part of your class. Well, glad you're here. Thank you. Hello, China. Benjamin confesses that this isn't really grafting, but I was at school the other day and there's a pomegranate tree there, so I might have stolen a couple of branches to root. I do not encourage stealing. You need to go confess. Well, you just confess now. So ask the Lord for forgiveness. And then go tell the groundskeeper that you've stolen from him. Actually, people will usually give you cuttings if you ask, and then there's no guilt involved. And if you don't have any guilt, then you're an evil psychopath. You should feel guilty all the time like I do. Oh, good. Sarah says, it was your book I was reading about to find out about the mound layering. Good. Yeah, I usually it's done on apples for rootstocks. Incidentally, that book is the link below this if you don't have free plants for everyone. I'm just going to keep selling this book. I want this book to sell. By golly, it's spring. I only really get good book sales in the spring. I don't know if you know how hard it is to be a garden writer. People are super interested in you for about 2 months out of the year. And then the rest of the year, they're like, oh, we did another video. I mean, I could actually see like the viewership on my blog goes like this and then down. Book sales go like this. I have like 3 months to make my good sales for the year. And then the rest of the year, the book sales are like, and then spring, March, April, May, boom. And then June, it starts to drop off. And then it's craters by August. Nobody cares. Nobody cares anymore. You're yesterday's news. I don't know what people get into in the fall. Football or deer hunting or something. I don't know. Shane says, do you know if Jeff Lawton grows trees from seeds and grafts them? I've watched his Food Forest video. I'm not sure where he gets them. I know they have a little nursery there. I wouldn't be surprised if they grafted them. He's a pretty practical guy. Yosef Permaculture says, Che works with mulberry. Good, I thought so. I have never seen a Che fruit in person. I've always wanted to get one and haven't. The Che fruit is also called melonberry, I believe. Martha says, I have a mulberry that I prune to 12 to 18 inches every winter because I don't want a tree. It stays shrubby and is currently fruiting now. Good. Thank you, Martha, for the field report there. Thank you very much. Matthew Thomas sends a $5 super chat. I appreciate that. Jack says, I have been watching you for 3 years and I'm only 16 years old. Welcome. Glad you're here. I'd love to push the limits of my growing zone, 6A, and I have a 15-foot almond tree in my backyard, probably the only one in Pennsylvania. Dude, you're way ahead of where I was when I was 16. I planted my first fruit tree when I was 15, and that was a coconut palm. And it's gigantic now. Coconuts on it all the time. Really excellent. And I think that's really amazing that you're doing that. Tina, thank you very much for the super chat. I just saw that. Much appreciated. But Jack, man, good. You're on the right track there. You are on the edge of the growing zone for almonds, but hey, if you can get that thing to fruit, you can plant the almonds off of it and see if you can kind of adapt it to the area. I would plant tons and tons of almond seeds and see if those genetics express themselves. When you get a really bad winter, you're going to lose some of them. The ones that you don't lose, those are your babies, you know? Name it Jack's Hardy Almond, you know? Good work. Okay, Benjamin, good work. Benjamin says, I was at school because of robotics. No one else was there, and today I confessed to my biology teacher over Zoom, and he told me that he would be A-okay with my air layering it too. To absolve him, Benjamin. Go in peace. I am moving along here. How long to keep apple seeds in a refrigerator, ZE says. I keep them in the refrigerator until they sprout, so usually that's 2 to 3 months. If they don't sprout after like 4 months, probably they're not going to. They seem to do it 2 to 3 months, sometimes as little as a couple of weeks. Often they're sprouting in a couple of weeks. It's pretty fast. But it depends on how long they've been chilled too, what variety of apple, if they feel like sprouting or not. But usually much longer than 3 months is probably going to do it. Sam says, saw your post on keeping pecan trees short. I have a few seedlings. I've been thinking of doing the same thing. Yeah, I post at thesurvivalgardener.com every day. That's my daily blog. It's the thing that I do every weekday. I post there. And the pecan trees thing was fascinating. Practical Primate posted a backyard orchard culture pair of pecans. His dad had planted 2 pecan trees in the same hole and then pruned the tops of them off so they were going sideways and making fruit. And they were making nuts. According to him, they were fruiting just fine and abundantly. And I love it because instead of having a 60 to 80 foot, 100-foot tree in your backyard, which will shade your whole yard, you could have, you know, some pecans in your backyard that are your own pecans. That's really cool, you know. ZE says how to prune hard for more fruit yield. Well, usually the year after you prune hard, you don't get more fruit yield, but it will build the structure to get better fruit in the future. So what you want is you want more sunlight through the middle of the tree. You want the branches to go out sideways rather than going straight up. The branches that go up tend to not produce much fruit. The ones that go sideways produce much more fruit. So you want the trees to go like that. And I like the open vase style of pruning with it sunny all through the middle. You get the sunlight distributed, the breeze comes through, pollination is better. You don't have all the rubbing and stuff going on. You have less issues with disease because you don't have a bunch of crossed tight branches on the inside. You get better shaped fruit. You know, it allows it easier to manage, easier to thin, easier to keep short, and you get higher quality fruit. And you can keep things small. So generally what you're trying to do is get the branches to go sideways, have a good strong structure to the tree, get lots of light in there, and keep it within reach. There's a lot that goes into it, but there's a book called Grow a Little Fruit Tree. Just a second. I will drop my Amazon affiliate link to this tree. This is one of this book on pruning trees small. It is such a good little book. I actually made it a bestseller again, and I tried to get Ann Ralph to do an interview with me, and she was gonna do one, and then I caught up with her later, and she's like, I'm too busy. Which is too bad because I really wanted to talk to her about it. It's a great little book. But anyhow, I keep recommending the book anyways. And I want to talk to you about this one day. That's it. Grow a Little Fruit Tree. I just dropped the link. Let's see. Shane says, if you're wanting to do a really big planting project, would you try to grow rootstock from seed and buy scionwood to graft them, or would you buy rootstock and graft them? If I was going to do a big planting project, I might buy rootstock liners from a big nursery and then graft on top of them. to save time. You know, if I could get a bunch of rootstock and get rolling. If we're talking a commercial project, you know, we're not like I'm low income and I don't have any money to buy fruit trees. I might pay for the rootstock and then graft them, or I might just get bench grafts. Bench grafts are not necessarily that expensive. I probably would just let somebody else graft the whole batch of them if I could get them for $4 or $5 a fruit tree, like you can sometimes with bench grafts. If you're buying in bulk as a wholesaler, you got your nursery license, you can find the right guy that does these things. You can order like 100 for $5 a piece and put them all in. That would be the easiest, fastest way to do it. It's time or money. Hannah says, you recommended the Grow a Little Fruit Tree book, and I'm so thankful. I have a backyard of manageable fruit trees. It's awesome. Oh, that's cool. Hey, send pictures, Hannah. Send pictures of your fruit trees, you know? And if there's a person in it to show how tall the trees are, so much the better. I would love to share that on the blog, because I'm just fascinated with the backyard orchard culture stuff and keeping trees manageable. I mean, a lot of us don't really have that much space. It's insane that I have as much space as I do now, but I only had a half an acre down in the tropics. The first house I had only had a tenth of an acre. Then I had a house with like 1/3 of an acre. You know, I've generally not had that much space. The biggest house that I actually owned for land, I had 1 acre, and I put like 70 fruit trees in the front yard. Hoban87 says, David the Good, how long do peach and nectarine seeds need to stratify? Usually it's about the same as apples and pears. They usually sprout in about the 3-month mark. Yeah, Rehoboth Farm says, till they sprout roots. That's what I've done. That's right. Rehoboth Farm, that's what I've done. The next stage is trickier, explaining why you have a dozen little baggies of dirt in the fridge to the woman. Good luck. Yeah, my wife is used to it. Look at. She said today, there's hardly enough space in here. You've got these huge. I see you have these huge pickle jars like this, and they're full of seed packets. And I've jammed the bottom of the fridge full of them. Plus, I've got baggies of dirt in there. So basically, 1/4 of the fridge is full of dirt and seed packages. And she says, it's just these things take up a lot of space in here. I hardly have space for the food for the children. And I'm like, oh, I know, but those jars there, I mean, that's like literally thousands and thousands of pounds of potential food. It's like concentrated food right there. I mean, she wasn't really complaining, but I was just thinking, whoa, mind blown. When you think about it, there's potentially 1,000,000 pounds of food in there. If I grew every one of those seeds, and they all went into big trees, and they grew every kind of fruit. Wow. Think about it. Knowledge is power. She enjoys living with me. I have good excuses for everything. Hey, have a good night, Karen. Thank you very much for the very generous super chat. God bless your nursery this spring. Karen's got all kinds of cool stuff going. Hey, and Karen, if you actually open your nursery up for sale, please let me know when you do that. I would love to send some people your way. Paul says, thank you, David, for encouraging us to experiment with grafting. You are very welcome. Rehoboth Farm says, Burnt Ridge. Antonova rootstocks are like $5 at Burnt Ridge. Okay, that's excellent. That's very useful. Hello, the overworked gardener. Good to see you. Gypsy says, I'm excited. I have 5 acres to play with now. I told the logger I want everything but fruit and nut trees and a few native dogwoods out. Cool. It'll be fun. Well, see if you may be able to harvest some of that wood for lumber, so I wouldn't be too vigorous about it. But yeah, if he's a logger and you can sell the wood and trade it for fruit trees, that's pretty awesome. trying to get everybody here. Hannah says, I will take pictures tomorrow. Fantastic. Email them to me. I am David at floridafoodforests.com. Incidentally, I get a lot of emails. Sometimes people email me like, did you get that email that I sent? Did you get that email? Yes, I'll probably get back to you eventually. It's just I get a lot of emails. And, you know, I've had somebody say, I don't think you're going to answer this, but, well, here goes. Don't do that. Just ask me the question. Don't be all weird. You know, email me and I'll get back to you if I can, and hopefully I will. I generally do eventually. I try to write everybody back. And I probably answer easily 10 or more questions a day from people. It's just what I do. I like doing it. So if you email me, I will write you back if I can. But garden pictures are always welcome. Mojo Palms 1 says, aren't you in Alabama and doesn't everyone have at least a few extra refrigerators and freezers sitting around? Yeah, generally, except for me. I mean, I just moved back. I left most of what I had. I mean, I had built a homestead down in the tropics and I left most of it behind. And before that, I had left most everything behind in Florida. So I'm basically like, I used to have, I bought big chest freezers twice and I don't have a chest freezer now. You know, it's the little things you realize, oh, shucks. I don't have a drill. What happened to my drill? Oh, shucks. I thought I had a box of screws. No, I have to buy new screws. That was at my previous house, you know. But I'm going to try and buy a chest freezer this week for extra meat and that kind of thing, because I'm going to raise a whole bunch of meat birds and put them in the freezer. But, yeah, I'm going to get there. Hey, the Country Ninja. Say hi to Hunter for us. Joe says, hi, David. I have some jackfruit seeds in the fridge in a glass jar. Do you think they're still viable? Nearing 2 years in there? No, they're not viable. Almost certainly not. Jackfruit seeds, first of all, they're tropical. They don't like to be cold. And second of all, the viability on jackfruit seeds is really only a few weeks. You need to plant them fresh from the fruit. Like you get the fruit. You open it up, you take the seeds out of it, you plant them like within a couple of days. They really have a very short viability period. A lot of tropical fruits are like that. Yeah, little baby Hunter. Have a good night, baby Hunter. Monique says, I love your new zone, David. You're pumping out videos on my exact timeline. We're in the same zone. Yeah, it's perfect. Deb's Enriched Refuge yells, Debbie, don't yell. Will I shock my... Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. There's a song in here, man. Will I shock my 100-year-old apricot tree? If I prune with it, being many, many years since it was, yeah. Well, I shock it. Yeah. Yes, you may shock it, you may kill it, but you may reinvigorate it for another 100 years. Yeah. All right. No, Deb. If it's not doing anything, prune it. And if you actually cut a tree down while it's still dormant, it often grows back just fine. Rachel Holt says, can't wait to start growing my own food forest on my family's farm in the Midwest. Oh, fantastic. I hope you got that beautiful glacial soil up there. Hey, man, you can grow some good stuff up there. You can grow gooseberries and currants and lingonberries and the northern highbush blueberries probably. Man, you can grow the sour cherries. Sour cherries go a long ways up there. We were talking about that last night. And then the pears and the apples and the plums. Lots of berries, lots of raspberries and stuff like that are cool. Anna says, anyone want goats in the next 3 weeks? Central Florida. I would be so tempted to get a couple of goats, Anna, and tie them in the woods here. I don't know if you can do that safely. Like, maybe I'd have to put a fence around a section of woods. But if there's a way to, like, keep them in the woods and let them bush hog, it would be so cool. What growing zone are you in? Florida 9? No, I am in zone 8B, just over the border of the panhandle of Florida. Angela says, hello, I have recently subscribed. Rainbow Tentacles. Rainbow Tentacles, nice. Food Forest. Well, welcome. A Fishes and Loaves Life says, I would love a 2-car garage just for a chest freezer. You know, like a giant walk-in, particularly in Florida or anywhere in the deep south. A gigantic walk-in refrigerator freezer would be great. I would just go put a jacket on and sit in there, you know, through the middle of the day. I'm going. I'm trying to get everybody here. We're gonna make another 2-hour stream, aren't we? We will do it. Is it possible to germinate dried tropical fruit tree seeds? Doubtful. It depends on the species. Some of them will keep for a couple of years, and some of them only keep for a couple of weeks. Joe says, thanks, David. Sort of like black sapote. I've noticed the sapote seeds dry out and are no longer viable. Yeah, unfortunately, sapote's another one. The one that's the worst that I've dealt with is canistel. If you don't plant that thing in a few days, it's just dead. Done. Zachary says, will dry pomegranate seeds germinate from nasty old cracked ground ones? I don't know. Try it. I mean, if they don't sprout in a month or a month and a half, probably not. Joe says, David, beside blueberries, any other berry that requires acidic soil? I understand not so with raspberries or strawberries. No, they don't require acidic soil, but they often will handle some acidic soil. And blackberries often grow really well in acidic soil. You know, like all the relatives of blueberries seem to do well too. Like what do they call them? There's deer berries and stuff like that. There's a bunch of wild blueberry forms that grow well. I would just plant every kind of blueberry I could get, but blackberries like it too. There's blackberries all over the place in the acid soil here. And I've noticed that persimmon trees don't mind the acid soil either, though that's not related. Treywick Ellis says, think of Feijoa, pineapple guava will grow in northern zone 8. Boy, that's tight. They can take temperature down into the teens, but maybe sheltered location. I would try it. You're welcome, David. I don't mind responding to questions. If you really, really want to make sure that I get your question, you know, put it in a super chat. But if I can get to them, I like to answer everybody's questions. We don't discriminate here. The overworked gardener says, I have 14 goats and they're going to be the death of me. Okay, yeah, that's too many goats. I hope they're paying you back. No wonder you're overworked. You're the overworked shepherd. Goat herd. Vonnery says, D to the G, my air layering is dry. Should I inject somehow liquid rooting compound? Well, if the soil around the air layer is all dried out, that's not good. It needs to stay somewhat moist. I don't know. It's hard to say without seeing it, but it should not dry out. Mama Woods is talking about dental issues on the stream now. I think I have an old filling that needs some attention. Eminem just hit it wrong. No, don't do that. I'm going to sue David the Good. I broke a tooth watching his stream. There's just so much data to sink your teeth into. Oh, boy. Oh, I hate the feeling of teeth not working right. Jimbo says, any recommendations for green veggies in 8B? Yes, if you have not grown snake beans, aka yard-long beans, aka asparagus beans, I highly recommend them. They are vigorous. They grow really well. They don't mind the heat. Unbelievable, fantastic pole bean. But plant the green ones, not the red ones or the purple ones. The green ones taste the best. K4LR0B says, hi, David. Any tips on getting a mulberry tree to fruit a lot? Well, it's partially genetics and it's partially culture. So if it's a variety that's not a particularly good fruiter, like I had a couple of nondescript black mulberries that made an all right amount of fruit, but they weren't impressive. And then I had some improved varieties that make some serious amounts of mulberries. If you're dealing with a mulberry and it's in full sun, it's really well taken care of. It's got mulch around it. It's been well fed and it's big, but it doesn't make very many berries. It may just be the genetics of it, or it may be that it's getting too much nitrogen. They often respond well to pruning, and they will fruit again on the pruned areas. But generally, if you have a good variety, it's in full sun, you've watered it, fed it, mulched it, it'll produce well. Even if it's a good variety and you don't take particularly good care of it, it'll often still fruit just fine because they're tough. I am high on a hill as the lonely goat herd, the overworked farmer. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, I'm going through here. Steve says we have a Feijoa outside in zone 8B that survived the winter again. Last year it showed some minor leaf burn at 20 degrees. Oh, that's great. David says, any thoughts on white mulberry? Grows as a weed in my yard. Heard they're considered invasive. Yeah, it's an easy to grow fruit. They are considered invasive. The milkmaid says, I have to find a better way to get mulberries from a huge tree. I tried a tarp, no good. I'm trying sheets next year. Yeah, I've done that. Put a sheet or a tarp underneath the tree and shake it. But there you go. All right, so if anybody has any more really important questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I think I'm going to call this thing. If you have not gotten my book, Free Plants for Everyone, has tons of information on plant propagation, and there is a link below this video. So check that out. If you don't have it, I highly recommend you get it, and not just because I wrote it. I recommend it because it's like $16 and you will grow thousands of dollars worth of trees for free. So it's actually a really good trade. Plus, you get to support a noble cause. Me. No, my kids. Oh, think of the children. Think of all the children. $16 will support. After Amazon gets their cut, of course. Hey, Breaking Bear. So, Hannah says, I'm growing in the high desert in Arizona, thinking of starting biochar. Would it be useful to add pine needles? I don't see why not. I mean, you can pretty much turn anything into char. Any organic materials. I use pine needles at the bottom of my biochar pits to start them. But hey, you know, I mean, if you're throwing them in the compost pile, they break down really slow, but they do add a little bit of organic matter. They loosen the soil up a little bit. You can cool the soil by throwing them on top. There's a lot of different things. So have a good night, everybody. Kids should make me a tip jar. That's funny. All right, have a good night, everybody. Check out my book, Free Plants for Everyone, below this video. And also check out the Get Grafting demonstration if you want to see me actually performing 3 different simple grafts. I put it on YouTube some years ago, and it is pretty popular. So watch it, share it, pass it around, learn how to graft, save lots of money, and get fruit. I'm going to play a final song here. for you guys before I leave. Trailers for sale or rent. Oh, drop D. Trailers for sale or rent. Rooms to let 50 cents. No room, no. Oh, wait. No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom buys an 8x12 4-bedroom. Mama, man of means by no means, king of the road. 3rd boxcar, midnight train, destination Bangor, Maine. Old worn out suit and shoes. I don't pay no union dues. I smoke old stogies I have found, short but not too big around. I'm a man of means by no means, king of the road. I know every engineer on every train, all the children, all of their names, and every handout in every town, and every lock that ain't locked when no one's around. I sing trailers for sale or rent, rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom buys an 8x12 4-bedroom. I'm a man of means by no means, king of the road. Trailers for sale or rent, rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom buys an 8x12 4-bedroom. I'm a man of means by no means, king of the road. David says, I was thinking of grafting under those white mulberry. I would do it. Do it. And thank you very much. Sarah sends a $20 super chat for last night's slime buggy. Much appreciated. Have a great night, folks. God bless you all. I will post a video tomorrow on getting a plum tree back in shape, doing a little pruning, just another simple video on cleaning up a plum tree before spring here. And then I'll do some bigger videos soon. I've been kind of busy, and I filmed a bunch of little videos when I was working at a friend's orchard. So that'll be the last of those, and then I'll get back and show you guys some of the stuff that's going on in the garden. But until next time, go check out my book below, Free Plants for Everyone. I'm going to sell that thing. Sell the living deal. It's a hard sell. $16. It's worth thousands and thousands of fruit trees. You won't be disappointed, but there are no refunds, but you won't want one anyways. So have a good night, everybody. Thank you all. I'm going to go through here and thank everybody. Welcome to our new members, Marcus Aurelius, Zachary Fisher, and A Fishes and Loaves Life. Thank you to Foo Bear for remonetizing the stream after I covered Tom Petty at the top. Thank you very much to Karen Hill for $50 super chat. Thank you for playing 30,000 Years last night. Split the tip with your son, my awesome guitar shredding son. He will very much appreciate that. Alejandra, thank you. Matthew, thank you. Tina and Sarah, you all have a great night. Thank you to the members of this channel and for everybody that showed up and asked good questions. I love these discussions. It's a great time. We'll try to do this more often, and I will catch you next time. And until then, may your thumbs always be green.